My esteemed friends, have you ever been eaten by a giant fish at Ocarina of Time's fishing pond? Have you ever been eaten by a piranha plant in Mario Kart 64? Probably not, so why do people remember this happening to them? What was really behind the horse ghost mystery in GoldenEye 007? Today we're examining more mysteries and weird memories from the Nintendo 64, shedding a new light and insight on some classic tales, while examining and exploring some new items. So pour yourself a warm beverage, and let's ponder.
Here we go!
Okay, I've gotta start with this one. Piranha Plants in Mario Kart 64. They can be found on Mario's Raceway and Royal Raceway, but could they eat you? I mean, of course the answer is no, but there are a couple of stories of this taking place, and the character of one of these witnesses is what has me truly pondering this strange memory. David Wan writes, "When strange things happen the very first time you play a game, it can warp your perception on what is normal. Case in point. The very first time I played Mario Kart 64 on launch day in February 1997, Toad was eaten by a piranha plant. I just assumed this was normal for the game, so I avoided them like the plague. It wasn't until I would chat with others on Nintendo's BBS that I would find out that this was actually a glitch and not routine." Now here's the thing. David Wan is one of the most knowledgeable gamers in the entirety of the early Mario Kart games. He set some of the earliest world records in Super Mario Kart dating back to 1996. He's administered a website still online from the 90s, documenting thousands of glitches and oddities across hundreds of video games. He's been an active member of the Mario Kart community for 30 years, appearing many times at various community meets. So his testimony is worth more, in some sense, than that of many others, especially random observers, when it comes to Mario Kart. And he isn't the type to troll very much if you know his personality. So that all just makes this claim very strange. He clearly remembers being eaten by a piranha plant when first playing Mario Kart 64 in 1997, even though this is not possible. And he seems to kind of admit that, at the very least, it was a glitch and not routine. It just really causes me to wonder about the fallibility of the human mind. But here's the thing, he's not the only one. Two others have shared similar stories. Jocelyn writes, "Distinctly recall jumping into a piranha plant on Royal Raceway in Mario Kart 64 and getting stuck inside it, despite being a 2D sprite. Never been able to replicate." And Mombi writes, "Regarding Mario Kart 64, I have the vivid memory of falling on top of a piranha plant in the side of the track in Mario Raceway. The piranha plant then swallowed the whole cart for a few seconds and then spat me upwards in the air. That happened around the 2000s. Afterwards, I always tried to recreate the same event, but I never managed to land on top of the piranha plant. It may be some of those weird, realistic dream I had that stayed in my brain as an actual memory, because the more I look it up in the web, there's no evidence whatsoever that backs up my claim. So what in the world is going on here? Yes, piranha plants have existed in all variations of Mario Kart games, but in Mario Kart 64 and the earlier Super Mario Kart, they cannot eat you. It was only in later games where the plants would start biting you, causing you to spin out or something like that. Furthermore, I feel like the piranha plant was not very prominent in the N64 era, with it being brought more to the forefront after Mario Sunshine and Petey Piranha, who would later become a playable character in many games. You know, millions of people have played these Mario Kart games. The code doesn't lie. This isn't something that happens in Mario Kart 64. And no, a stray particle or whatever, external deus ex machina can't explain remembering a piranha plant eating you. So it's just a human brain blending memories, which is just truly the most fascinating understanding of this all. But as we'll find out, these are far from the strangest stories around. Rainbow Road and its rails in Mario Kart 64. A while back, I made a video exploring the people who believe that Rainbow Road had no railings, when in reality it has these beautiful star-shaped rails around the entirety of the track. Of course, you can still fall off because of the various inclines and declines throughout the track, but the rails are very much indeed there. I'll play a clip from that video to refresh your memory. Here's a post from the r/Mandela Effect subreddit from March 2018. I distinctly remember falling off the Rainbow Road all the time as a kid, but now it has rails. It's the only Mario Kart I've ever played, so I can't be remembering any other versions. Well, alright, that's not very convincing. So here's another post from January 2022. Did N64 Rainbow Road have rails? Apparently it's 100% guardrails now. The lack of rails was a defining characteristic of every Rainbow Road, but N64 took the cake. Just a railless ribbon flowing through a black void. It was merciless, but had the most epic theme music. That map was the devil, but couldn't beat that aesthetic. I grew up playing the most difficult track ever. It was unparalleled. Now it has bumpers on the entire track. What a joke. But recently I received this comment which really reveals a ton. The Terminator. Okay, so I'm pretty confident I am the origin of this myth. I made a post back in 2017 on PGC forums because I remembered playing a version of Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road without guardrails and was confused when I played it years later and saw them. I never owned the game, only rented it back then, so I didn't play it for very long. Anyway, around a year after the post, someone else posted about it on Reddit, and it seems to have exploded. I'm pretty confident after thinking about it, I mixed it up with Mario Kart DS's Rainbow Road, which has very similar star rails but with sections lacking them, as well as memories of me sucking at the game and flying off the edge of the track because I was a dumb kid. There was nothing online about Mario Kart 64 Rainbow Road not having rails before my post. So yeah, my misremembering started a rumor. Oops. And this does seem to add up because all the comments and posts that I read in that previous video came in 2018 or later after the Terminator here made his initial post on the PGC forums. So, I think this is just the crux of so many of these mismemories. Not in all cases, but sometimes it's just one kid throwing out a mismemory or poor gameplay, and it just takes on a life of its own. And there's something beautiful and strange about that unto itself. Like how much of our collective memory is really accurate? How easily can we be influenced to believe incorrect information? I know these questions go well beyond the realm of retro gaming, but it truly does make me ponder. Horse Ghost Revisit. I wanted to revisit the horse ghost phenomena after getting some good feedback and replies about the situation at hand. For those who haven't seen, here's a very quick refresher on horse ghost. But then at the end, horse ghost. Damn on any difficulty with any cheats. Jump off the platform while facing left, strafe right, look closely and you'll see a transparent horse. Like, keep in mind, everything else documented on this guy's page has been legit to this point, so what the heck is horse ghost? I picked up my controller and tried it myself, and yeah, I couldn't see anything. And so here are at least two very good explanations for what's going on here, as well as a kind of conventional or typical explanation. First, I had a handful of people send in screenshots of what they believe to be the horse ghost, though truly none of these seem very convincing to me. Like, would this website really have described this in such a way if it were just this vague? So here's some more food for thought. Apparently, I didn't know this last video, so thanks to those who pointed it out, but the creator of this website, Jeep Barnett, is a very well-known programmer or game developer who worked on early Valve, having a huge influence on that space, even working on Portal, as well as Half-Life 2, Left 4 Dead, Portal 2, and many others. So yeah, Jeep Barnett is a hugely prolific and frankly legendary character in this space. And so it makes sense with someone so technically minded why they would, A, make a website about cool GoldenEye facts and mysteries they discovered while playing the game in the 90s, and B, why they would have this website which is still live and still actively hosted nearly 30 years later, even just for his random GoldenEye page. Most of these pages were hosted on Angelfire or GeoCities back in the day, or as I like to call it, Geocities, and so they're no longer online. But Jeep Barnett, with all his technical knowledge, his site still is online. So 2 suggestions came up. One is that this could just be a joke. You know, with verbiage like look closely at the screen and it taking place at the end of Dam, the idea is that the game fades to black and you see a reflection of yourself in the old CRT television. And maybe Jeep was suggesting that, you know, hey reader, you're an ugly old horse. A classic kind of gotcha LOL moment from that era. And whether or not this is the case, there is probably one further explanation to this all. By including something so random and specific as horse ghost, Jeep could easily search the web to see if anyone else had copied his site. Just search horse ghost GoldenEye, and if anyone else stole his section or copied his pages word for word, it would pop up and he would know. An anti-plagiarism measure, if you will. And given Jeep's technical knowledge, this would be the kind of thing that he might do on a website. So yeah, could there actually be a horse ghost in GoldenEye? Maybe it's one of these shapes on the mountain. But more realistically, it serves as both a silly joke and an anti-plagiarism measure that one of gaming's brightest minds placed on a 90s website nearly 30 years ago. Okay, so this is pretty crazy, and I think we may have solved an urban legend from 1997. Indeed, that whole thing with getting eaten by the Piranha Plant? Well, I was just playing around getting footage for this video on Mario's Raceway and Royal Raceway, trying to drive into the Piranha Plant flowers. And if you mushroom very close to one, you'll just like pass right through it. You know, the hitbox detection probably doesn't pick up every few frames or something like that. But if you're a little ways back and mushroom into it, you absolutely do get stuck in the Piranha Plant for a little bit. And like, getting this happening, it actually reminded me of, yeah, I did experience this back in the day or at various points in my life playing Mario Kart 64, and so you can totally get stuck in the Piranha Plant briefly. And it's weird because you only do get stuck very, very briefly. You have to hit it like head on, but you do get stuck briefly. And so it really feels as if it has swallowed you for a few seconds and then spits you out, as naturally a Piranha Plant would, to sort of be a hazard on the course. And it's just so interesting because, like, you know, these people remembered this happened to them back in the day. It sounded crazy. It sounded like an urban legend. Of course, this doesn't happen to you in Mario Kart 64, but, like, here is footage of me running into a Piranha Plant, getting stuck in it for a bit. Totally looks like getting swallowed. And so, like, if this is true, and this is sort of the source of this kind of legend, then I think we can really see how a lot of these legends form over the years. Yes, some of them may be totally invented, totally fake, but maybe there's a lot more truth deep down to many of them, more of them than we think. Here's a story recently posted to Reddit that certainly piqued my interest. In r/Ocarina of Time, did a giant monster ever eat Link at the fishing spot? Going off a memory back when I was 7 or 8, so bear with me. For context, I consider myself knowledgeable with the fishing aspect of the game, since I knew where to get the biggest fish, and that you could steal the hat from the fishing hole man. So this glitch, or whatever it was, genuinely freaked me out and made me stop playing for a while. I don't remember doing anything special to trigger it. I just remember running around the pond, trying to lure a fish. At one point I did step into the pond to the line further into the center, at the line before it went into a swimming animation. I remember casting the line, and this is the part where it gets blurry because I either tried reeling the lure back or the glitch happened. A monster, I can barely remember the shape of what it looks like. I think it was a giant, dirty, greenish-brown monster fish, huge, just a bit smaller than Jabu Jabu's size, bite Link where only his legs were sticking out of the mouth and drags him back into the water. All the while Link is screaming, like the death scream. After that, the camera is stuck onto the water where Link is dragged, and it's just a horrendous audio nightmare fuel of Link screaming as there's glitched static buzzing sound at the same time. You don't really see the monster, the camera doesn't move towards it like it's a big boss fight cutscene. I think that's why it freaked me out so much, because it came out like a jump scare. The camera is facing behind Link as it usually does. A monster thing comes from the top right, grabs Link, Link's legs dangle from the mouse stiffly, and it just whooshes him out of frame. I do remember trying to wiggle the controls a little when that happened and nothing was moving, so it was like I was stuck in a cutscene where I couldn't move Link or the camera. There wasn't much animation to Link either. His legs were still as he got dragged under, and he didn't try to wiggle out of the mouth, so it looked like it was an unfinished cutscene. There was more movement for the fish monster though, since it was able to fluidly grab and drag Link. If this adds any context or explanation, the cartridge I played on was one of the originals before they removed some of the controversial symbols and other audio in the newer versions. I never experienced this again and never found out how to trigger it. My brother told me I either dreamt it or didn't put the cartridge in properly. I'm not an expert or knowledgeable in the N64 cartridges, but I don't think not shoving it in the console correctly would trigger what looked like a scrapped cutscene or enemy attack. Forgive my long post and possible repeating, I remembered more details as I continued writing and tried to incorporate as much as possible to paint a somewhat vivid description. Edit, no, this isn't a creepypasta, sorry if it reads like one, and I genuinely don't think it's a dream either because I ran out the room screaming and crying, and my sister had to come in and turn off the N64 and TV for me. She only saw the glitched out screen and Link missing, not the animations. Edit, I never played Resident Evil and didn't know it existed at the time. I didn't even know a scene similar to what I described happens in Resident Evil 4. Now, there are a couple of dozen replies to this, in which most people respond that OP is mixing up memories with entering Jabu Jabu, or had a dream, or is writing a creepypasta, things that he would later address. I also think he might be mixing up the like enemy, which does swallow you. Maybe his game crashed as he got eaten by a like at some point when playing the Fire Temple or something like that. But this is all such an interesting thing to ponder, because it kind of blends worlds with my recent video about Dory eating you in Super Mario 64, as well as another recent viral video with the El Puerco, another Ocarina of Time cryptid urban legend. I find it interesting how, I don't really buy this one at all. I give more credibility to the claims that were made decades ago, rather than things that, pop up today, for example, for one reason or another. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I suppose these claims from eons ago felt like they were made in more earnest, and it was just a more earnest time on the internet for sure, rather than people writing up a story and making up something for fake internet points, so to speak. Not necessarily that is what this guy is doing, but that is out there. Let alone in many cases monetizing clicks and traffic in this attention economy or clip economy. And believe me, the ultimate irony is not lost on me in this situation here. It's one of those things too where you'll often hear these tropes of people believing that their copy of the game was one of the first ones printed and maybe had unpatched glitches, and no one else saw it or remembers it, and they're just these kind of things that stick out when you read accounts like this. Either way, I certainly do not believe that this guy ever got eaten by a giant monster while fishing in Ocarina of Time, and I'm not even sure he believes it, frankly. Meanwhile, as for the other stories that I've told and will tell in this video, I kinda do believe that people experience the things they claim to have encountered. But hey, while we're on the topic of all these strange memories in these old games, why not? Someone remembers getting eaten by a giant fish, the giant Hylian loach, I suppose, in the fishing pond. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he is mixing up the legend of the Hylian loach with other legends and stories of being eaten by some creepy creature on screen. And lastly today, in honor of the announcement of Star Fox for the Switch 2, I wanted to share one of my own stories and childhood memories in playing that game. So, as kids, of course, you don't have your whole fancy gamer den setup, and you kind of just make do with whatever you do have. I actually didn't even have a Star Fox 64 cartridge back then, and this is like the late 90s, early 2000s, but my cousin did, and he lived at my grandma's house for a few years, so when I went over there, I would see him, and Star Fox 64 was among the handful of games we would play. So I learned the game and got at least decent enough at it to play through the game and beat it. But this particular time we were playing, we were not at Grandma's house, but actually at Grandma's cottage. The old cabin where I used to do occasional firesides from up until a few years ago. And this was like the early 2000s in this particular story. And my cousin's N64 used the coaxial adapter to attach to a TV, which I remember being a big point of contention in the household, how Nintendo screwed everyone by not supplying the device with the console. Of course, I know now that the TV they had was more so the problem, not having, an AV input, but hey, it is what it is. So speaking of TVs, in this case we're at the old family cottage, and if you know anything about these family cottages, the way they kind of work is that anything from a house that still works, but you're kind of moving on from, and is kind of too good to throw away, it ends up there. So this is true of like old couches, old chairs, old beds, old TVs. And this is true of numerous black and white televisions, which we used as the main televisions at the cottage for many years. So we were playing Star Fox on a black and white TV. And alright, not to make this a total shaggy dog story, but I've heard that boomers dream in black and white because they grew up watching TV in black and white. Like the actual boomers born from 1946 to 1964. I don't know how true this is exactly, but ask your parents next time you see them because it sounds like it could be true. And so I experienced a fair amount of black and white television in my life, even in the 90s and 2000s, because the TVs we had at the family cottage for many years were black and white. So my cousin and I are playing through Star Fox, and he is claiming this whole time that beating the bosses will be literally impossible because you won't be able to see their yellow boxed weak spot. This was of course hilarious to me as a gamer because I obviously still knew where their weak spots were, and I proceeded to blow his mind on each stage by actually managing to beat the bosses. I particularly remember beating the boss of Medio, the game's second stage, because he had very notable yellow weak spots visible on a color TV. But yeah, playing through Star Fox on a black and white TV, much to the amazement and bewilderment of my older cousin actually, was just a childhood memory that sticks out to me and one of those weird things that for some reason you just remember when playing the game. I only made it to the 4th or 5th world that day before we had enough and decided to go down to the lake or whatever typical Canadian cottage thing was going on, but it just stuck with me all these years. And with the announcement of Star Fox, along with this video of childhood memories and strange things, I just want to share that one today. If you have a weird childhood memory or just a fond childhood memory, I would love to hear it in the comments. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thanks to the channel members and Patreon supporters for all of your support of my work. Stay true, my friends, and I will see you in the next stream, video, or fireside.